Welcome to Pod Me If You Can, I'm David Farrell. Today's film is Falling in Love with Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro.
Pardon me if you can. Movie reviews.
Molly, Meryl Streep, and Frank, Robert De Niro, have a chance meeting while shopping for Christmas presents in New York. Both are married to other people. They share a moment in a bookshop, and while fumbling over bags, they accidentally take home the wrong books. Frank's wife Anne, played by Jane Kaczmarek, the mother from Malcolm in the Middle, opens a book on sailing, while Molly's husband Brian, played by David Clennon, opens a book on gardening. Months later they run into each other again on the train. Soon the two of them fall into an affair. For a film like this to work, you want the affair to work, which is tricky because it's morally a wrong area and a difficult task to sell to the audience. This film shows the more mundane elements of both marriages: stale dinners, noisy kids, the things of everyday life. That means, of course, that they have to show a more exciting and fun time for our two leads when they're alone together. Robert De Niro's character is surrounded by real New Yorker guys named Vic and Joe. Harvey Keitel plays a guy who's getting a divorce and kind of showing us what his character might go through should he pursue this affair. One of the funny things I noticed though is that, we know Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel from a whole plethora of work, and to watch them walk around in hard hats, carrying plans, it looks like they're dressing up and pretending to be architects. I know they're great actors, but I did find it difficult to believe them as architects. Diane Wiest, who's more famous as the mother from Parenthood, plays Molly's friend, and she only wants to talk about men, and who's having sex with who. The film is interesting because we often only get one side of the conversation. There's a scene where we're on the other side of the glass while they talk on the train, and we have to put a whole bunch of our own imagination to what they're actually saying. There's another scene where Meryl Streep's character Molly receives a phone call, and we only hear her agreeing to go and meet with Frank. We don't hear his persuasive argument and wanting to see her. So we have to fill in some of the blanks the audience has to work in this film. One of the things that put me off a little bit was when they have their very first kiss, and it's about at the halfway point of the film. And right after kissing, he says, "I love you, I do," which is kind of a red flag and like a desperation. He doesn't play it cool at all. I found it really interesting when they were finally alone together and they had the opportunity to have an affair, that no music creeps into the scene. Whereas you could have had a big score and highlighted for the audience that this was the right thing for these characters. Instead, you get wet mouth sounds and street noise. It's difficult because you see their partners and you get to know their family life, and yet you're rooting for them to root someone else. His wife, for example, is so forgiving of his work schedule and she's so nice. And if you're like me and you've watched her in Malcolm in the Middle before this film, it might be jarring to see her smiling there, and you might wonder what her ulterior motive is, because whenever she's smiling in that show, she's trying to manipulate the boys. There are a couple of cameos. Jesse Bradford plays one of Robert De Niro's young sons. Frances Conroy, who people would know from 6 Feet Under, plays a waitress. I just wanted to highlight one scene as well where the car safety goes out the window. This is made in 1984. And seatbelts, I guess, are still a suggestion because these two kids run amok and they're playfully spanked by Robert De Niro's character, but, no one's getting them in seatbelts or pushing that issue. The film is very realistic. It has a kind of a slower pace to it. I don't think there was as much audience demand on action or sex scenes. There was nothing to really drive this into any super interesting territory. So the film feels a little light. Basically, they meet. They have kind of an emotional affair, they have the possibility of a physical affair, and then it's what comes of their relationship. And that feels like it should be shorter than an hour and 42 minutes. But they really take their time to lay it all out. I suppose the title bothers me most of all. This feels like a lie, this packaging. This feels like a rom-com where two people fall in love. This scene is not in the movie, this is a picture just taken for the DVD. The packaging just feels like a misrepresentation. And speaking of missed opportunities, the only other thing I'll add is that at the end of the film, they're sort of in this moment, which is this big sweeping romantic moment, and it's just understated and it has a nice low score. But if that film was made in the 90s or early 2000s even, they would have a big emotional song sung by somebody, perhaps called Falling in Love, something to really sell to the soundtrack and the audiences, but there's a few missed opportunities. But it's quite slow, the acting is fine. Meryl Streep does a good job of playing it very guiltily. She has a husband, she has a whole life. And she doesn't necessarily want to have this affair, but there is a part of her that recognizes somebody admiring her and somebody that wants to spend time and talk to her. And she doesn't have that in her marriage right now. So it's a good film. It's well acted. It is a bit slow, unfortunately.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast at www.podmeifyoucan.com.